good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome yet again to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast. My name is Rockin' Randall Colburn, and I ain't no fortunate son. I am, however, very excited for part 2 of our discussion of Hearts in Atlantis, King's 1999 collection about the 60s, college, Vietnam, and falling pianos. Last week, we discussed the collection's first story, Low Men in Yellow Coats, and today we crack open the other 4, the title story, Hearts in Atlantis, Blind Willie, Why We're in Vietnam, and Heavenly Shades of Night Are Falling. So who's joining me for this chat? Mac, say hello.
This is Wolfman Mac, and, out of respect for Vietnam and all that went into it, I'm not going to put a nickname there. I'm excited to talk about these stories. It was a total tonal shift after Loman, and some of it was very hard to understand. And then, but towards the end of each story, I felt like I finally had a grasp on everything. But I'm excited to go into it deeply.
Dan, say hello.
This is Dan. You're going to cry 96 tears, Flieger. It was interesting. It's, going back and revisiting this. I like what King is aiming for here, whether it worked or not. I guess we're going to get to in the discussion. But yeah, welcome back to Vietnam, folks. Good morning.
Good to be back. Anna, say hello.
Hi, this is Anna Marie Red Anna Cox.
That's good.
Although I wanted to keep Hotsy Coxy. I think I might use that in later shows, but sticking with the same character at least.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, this is real. I always, whenever I read King stories like this, I always want to figure out when was the time that he first published in the New Yorker. Like, I feel like there's like this point in King's career when he started caring about what the New Yorker thinks.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Well, that's definitely on the docket.
Right.
So some quick history. We mostly covered the history of the book in the last episode, but just a little rehash. This came out on September 14th, 1999, just a few months after King's near-fatal car accident. These were all news stories, aside from Blind Willie, which was originally published in the October 1994 issue of Atlantis, and in 1997 was published as part of King's limited edition collection, 6 Stories, alongside a handful of stories that would end up in Everything's Eventual. It was heavily revised here. The way we're going to do this, I'm going to pop on over to our synopses section. I'm going to read the synopses of these stories, and we're going to kind of just talk about each one from a story perspective. Because I think the thing about Hearts in Atlantis and why I kind of broke off these 4 from Low Men is that I think these 4 are more thematically forward than story forward, which is rare for King. So I want to kind of separate, like, how did we react to these as just pieces of fiction? And then later we're going to talk about the themes, which I sort of think are the driving force in a lot of these. So, but just to kind of ease us in, begin with Hearts in Atlantis, second story in the book, second longest in the book. It's pretty much a novella. It takes place in 1966. It's about a kid named Peter Riley, a freshman at the University of Maine. He gets addicted to playing hearts in the all-male dormitory where he lives. Although their student draft deferments have shielded them from serving in the Vietnam War, Riley and the growing number of students addicted to the game put themselves at risk as their studies suffer and their political awareness begins to take shape. Pete is obsessed with Carol from Low Men, who is also there. My reaction to this story is I was in high school when I first read this, and I didn't have much of a connection to it at all. I was kind of like, is this what college is going to be like? Probably not, because this was, 40 years ago at that time. And, but I was excited about losing my virginity. I'll say that, which, happened in this story for good old Peter, and was looking forward to it happening to myself as well. But I will say, rereading it now, like now that college is so far in my rear view, it left me with a really intense melancholy, which is funny because Mike was texting me and he's reading it and he feels the exact same way. I think it sent both of us sort of into little memory spirals of our college experiences and the good and the bad of it all. And because I think what King captures in this story is I don't know, like the excitement of, not of being more or less unsupervised, and being able to make friends in kind of an entirely new way. And also, kind of the thrill of your kind of first college romance, and also like the evolution from high school girlfriend and like losing that into kind of college flings. I don't know. Those are the moments that I think really stand out to me. I have a lot of thoughts thematically, but I also respond a lot to just our character Pete going from being a Republican to kind of an anti-war liberal, primarily because for a girl, which I think is how a lot of people's political awareness is sparked, is somebody they like, they want them to respect them a little bit more, so they perhaps tailor their beliefs, and then those things actually begin to take root inside of them. So I think those were the things I responded to as a story. But Mac, how about you? What did you think about Hearts in Atlantis?
It was kind of like, looking back, obviously, but I never played Hearts. I never got addicted to a game like Hearts in college. I thought that was such a strange thing to be the driving force of this story, was this game where they're essentially not betting anything really. They were
betting money.
Yeah, but it was like nothing essentially. They mentioned that a couple times.
It was
like formidable back then.
I mean, it's enough for like a date night, right? Like
yeah.
It's enough. It's like, I would think of it more like maybe like $1 a point, which seems like it's not a lot. But if you're like living hand to mouth as a student, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I remember.
Oh, dude, I was poor as fucking.
Oh gosh,
I remember caring about dollars.
I remember like I clung to the cans that I returned to the store, that was like my lunch money for the week. Sorry you were so rich, Mac, that this is just peanuts to you.
I mean, I don't know.
I wasn't rich, but I'll tell you right now, I certainly
wasn't.
I certainly wasn't risking my money. That was scraping by eating, canned food. Yeah. But, so I didn't really, I don't know. That just kind of bugged me because, well, we'll go into the theme more and the connectivity or whatever. But in terms of just like college experience, friends, and the kinds of people that are around and the people that he ends up kind of coming across and weirdly befriending in some weird ways. I don't know. That kind of was my experience. There were a lot of people that I don't think I would be caught dead hanging out with now, but you did because they were in your dorm or you.
Yeah, exactly.
There was an association there that you kind of were like, well, these are the people that you have to see all the time if you're going to hang out with so-and-so at whatever, Gilchrist Hall or whatever,
Yeah.
But, it, and then obviously it's a little different. I guess, I mean, when we were in college, like the war was going on, but there's no draft, there was not that backdrop to my college experience. So it was kind of interesting to see that. I guess I always kind of wondered that, in terms of like not being drafted if you were in school. I guess I didn't really know the mechanics of that, because like whenever you watch a Vietnam story or Vietnam movie or read about it, I feel like it's always about being over there. It's not about the people that are like
back home,
technically dodging,
They're not
legally
dodging,
or whatever.
no.
Yeah, I know, but you know what I mean? Like just the people that didn't end up going for whatever reason or another. But
Dan, how about you? What was your thoughts? How do you like this Peter Riley character?
I'm kind of like with Mac, I remember back when a penny could buy a car, though. The stakes were really... No, I remember because I lived in the dorm my freshman year, and that was like when Halo and Warcraft were big. And it was one of our first times having like a high-speed internet connection. So I had some people that I knew that failed out in their first year.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Like video games are the modern equivalent.
They tended to be like STEM majors who were geniuses who just maybe had some awkward social functions. But they kind of got by on intelligence their whole life, and then suddenly in college you have to do some work. So it wasn't Hearts, but more so the video games. And, I could relate to that. The odd thing, too, is a few of them did end up joining the military.
Yeah.
Not that there was a draft. But I thought the interesting part was that, they're playing for like these penny stakes, which adds up pretty quickly for college kids, but they're also playing for their possible lives, right? Because if they fail out of school, they might end up as cannon fodder in the Vietnam War. So I thought that was kind of interesting that you could just be willing to kind of throw it all away just for this card game,
Well, I think it's that sense, too, of just, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but not even being fully aware of what kind of stakes are really happening. I think it's that ignorance of childhood still bleeding into college,
And there's the one kid, I think he's like a farmer, I forget his name, but he's one of the first to drop out because he even says like, look, I'm not going to class, I'm not learning anything, and I'm just going to sit here and keep losing money to you guys. And he's sort of the first one that has that insight of like, it's better to like, step away from the table now and continue.
I knew a kid in college, my freshman year, who lived across the hall named Donovan, who he was a weirdo, and like he reminded me so much of people in this story, or like people in the story reminded me of him, but like he didn't really have a game or anything that he played that had him drop out. But I remember one day we all came home from class and he had ditched his classes and he had been printing out all day various bikini models and cutting them out and then putting them all over the walls of the dorm. Like they just covered all the walls, and his roommates were like, "Why did you do this?" And then he ended up dropping out about 2 months
That's very much like a Vietnam like soldier barracks thing to do.
Yeah.
Cutting out. Just a quick side tangent. So a kid in my dorm that actually lived across the hall, he was a nice guy and everything, but he'd always just hang out and play guitar. And he actually went on to become a multi-platinum selling artist, Spanish language band called Boyce Avenue.
Nice.
And they toured with like the Goo Goo Dolls and Switchfoot. But so of all the kids in my
two great
dorm,
bands.
all the kids in my dorm, the kid that hit it the biggest was the
dropout
guy who ended up in a boy band. So
School's not for everybody.
Anna, thoughts about Hearts in Atlantis?
Well,
Her eyes just rolled, by the way.
I would say push back a little bit on the like, what the fuck, why the hearts? It's addiction. You know, I mean, like I think they know they're risking their lives. I don't think it's like they don't really care and it's necessarily like the callowness of youth. I mean, I think towards the end, especially when the stakes do get higher, it's addiction. Like, like they cannot stop no matter what the cost. I think I wonder about, I'm interested in whether or not this kind of group addiction can kind of happen like that. I think possibly,
Sure.
that in the right circumstances, you can find sort of a mania like that takes over a small group of people. I would say the first thing that bothered me about this story was at the beginning where Pete, the narrator, is like, yeah, those of us who lived through the 60s don't like to talk about it much. And I'm like, boomer, please. Like, I mean, is there anything that boomers like to talk about more? It's crazy to me that this is somehow like supposed to be like his deep, dark secrets. And as far as like, we don't get the home view of Vietnam. I mean, I'm a little older than y'all, but, like The Big Chill and I'm trying to think of other movies. There's a ton of movies like that have like the shadow of Vietnam, like kind of happening in the background. And like, we have to worry about our student deferment. I think even like Animal House takes place like during the beginning of Vietnam. Like, I mean, it's there in popular culture, and the idea of the student deferment is there. I liked that part of it, that the stakes that is part of childhood to realize that the stakes are rising, and maybe there's sort of a liminal space there between the beginning of the book and towards the middle when they start to realize exactly what those stakes are. I guess, I don't know. It's funny, like, this is the problem with like the non-magical king, right? Like, it's a different set of expectations. I felt like this is all, I guess I'm getting to themes or maybe just generally actions, but a lot of the stuff here is pretty well trod ground for him.
Mm-hmm.
And not a lot of it is, there's nothing in this that he hasn't explored on some level.
Sure. Yeah.
The thing that leapt out at me, and the thing I think that I did leave that first story, leave Hearts in Atlantis, I will still be thinking about this. Unlike I think piano dropping from the sky, I'll probably be thinking about again someday. But I wonder a lot, what is it that makes people do the right thing? Especially, when Trump was elected, there was a lot of people who said, like, if you ever wondered if you'd have joined, the abolitionists, or if you've ever joined the civil rights movement, like, what are you doing now? And people who marched in the Floyd protests and stuff, and the people that didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think it's an interesting take on what the gears are that push and pull people from doing that to do the right thing. And I guess maybe we'll talk about that more. But that's the thing that I thought was the most valuable thing about this story.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on that we're going to touch on a little bit later. Cool. Let's talk about Blind Willie. Willie Shearman, a well-off suburbanite, spends his days in rags peddling in downtown New York City during the hours when the blindness he suffered during Vietnam apparently returns. He is also obsessed with Carol. They're all obsessed with Carol, by the way. This story is weird. I don't like it very much. I think there's some nice writing here occasionally, but it's so heavy-handed, almost to the point of parody, and very overwrought in its execution. I find it just kind of genuinely puzzling. What I think is interesting about this and the next story, which I actually kind of like the next story, but they strike me as the kind of stories King sort of hated when he was in college. Like when he talks about his writing classes and where there would be so much emphasis placed on theme or structure or style over story. And King has always been the kind of guy who's like, I don't like to overanalyze works. I don't like to tear things apart structurally. I like to just tell a good story. And when I read a story like Blind Willie, what I'm seeing is kind of him overanalyzing his own story and over structuring it almost. Like he's so concerned with what every image stands for, what the symbolism is, that I feel like there's not really a good story at the heart of it. It doesn't feel like a complete story to me. So yeah, I guess those are my reactions to Blind Willie. I didn't like it when I was young, and I still don't like it today. Let's mix it up. Dan, thoughts on Blind Willie?
Yeah, I think there was something in here that could have been a good story. Kind of like what Randall said too. There are definitely parts that I enjoyed. It seems like this would fit better in a short story collection. And I couldn't help, it's oddly, like as I was reading it, thinking a lot about The Lawnmower Man and how I'd almost rather have a short story like The Lawnmower Man than one like Blind Willie. Just in terms of like, if we're not going to answer a ton of the questions or we're going to kind of end on a cliffhanger, I'd sort of just rather have fun with it like that.
At least be weird with it, yeah.
Yeah, and I like the idea of like
pubes.
Like the psychosomatic, going, I'm not sure the exact term, but that going blind, because the body can do things like that. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought the paying off of the cop was a little strange.
The cop subplot's bizarre.
Like, cops always want, a piece, but it seems like for, I don't know, the amount they're going for, it just seemed very strange. Like I had trouble figuring out a lot of the motivations for the characters. I didn't like it as much as Hearts in Atlantis. I'll definitely say that. I think it's one of the weaker entries, but there's still something at its core that I think could have been a good story. I would have liked to have read, because this one was written before.
Yeah, there's another version I've not read.
So I've never read the other version, and maybe that one fits a little bit better because it's not shoehorned into the greater work here. Oh. And I think Randall might have froze, but Anna, I was going to say, let me kick it over to you. What did you think about Blind Willie?
I also did not care for it. As far as like, the paying off of the cop, I thought, did he say like he makes $3,000 a day?
Yeah, the amount of money seemed really high.
I don't think panhandlers make that much. I don't think that, I'd go out. Like if that's what panhandlers make, then like, I'll go try it,
Yeah.
Yeah. So just the amount of money he was making seemed odd to me. I agree that like, is it really symbolism if it's literal? Like, I don't know if there are themes or symbols in that story because it's also literal.
Yeah.
I also felt like this is a story that would have benefited with, if it's some kind of like magical, I kept expecting like magical realism, not necessarily like supernatural, but like something to take it another level, because this thing that he's doing, it seems almost like magic realism in that I just don't buy that somebody does this. And I don't buy
Yeah,
that you can
exactly.
live in the suburbs and support this. Like rent 2 offices and a downtown and then like a midtown office building in New York.
Yeah.
And this is all you do for a living. And like you're living in the nice suburbs. And I mean, it just like everything about it. I just had so many questions. I could barely focus on who this was. I mean, I did figure out who it was and everything.
Yeah.
But like, it seemed like a lot of trouble to go through. And I wasn't even sure what he was getting out of it. Like, I guess at some point he's like literally like doing like the Bart Simpson, like writing down, like, I feel bad about whatever. That also was like, I mean,
well, that's like the
really
thing, right?
Penance. It's like, that's not.
He's like really saying, like the story is straining so hard to show that this is some like form of penance for this moment when he was young that he didn't stand up
to churches, but he doesn't give the bills because he has to support. I mean, I just so many questions. I like this is I feel like I say this a lot on this show, which is that like I just wish he still had editors. Like I just wish. You know,
yeah, I think I have thoughts about how I think this idea of penance sort of fits into the overall narrative, but I think on its own,
totally. No, but the book itself, like,
right? But as
is a great theme,
as its own story, it doesn't really hold up at all. Yeah. So, Mac, any extra thoughts about Blind Willie, or do you concur?
No, I mean, I echo everybody here. It does very much feel, now that I know that it was originally a different story and that it was heavily revised, you can absolutely tell. And I wish they had just taken it out, because I think that it doesn't fit. I mean, maybe if it was so fantastical, like you were saying, and like if there was a magical element to it where it was like, it was so much from his point of view that we couldn't trust anything. And then I would buy it a little bit more, because I don't know if I really believe that he was actually doing those things. And then if it's about penance, then why, when he is Blind Willie, essentially, like he's like feigning being Bobby, right? Because he writes that on the sign, right? So it's that was a little confusing too. I just felt like the next story and the final story just had more of a driving like connection and force. This felt like it didn't really need to be there for me, but
sure. Anna?
Well, I was gonna say the most magical thing in the whole book is that all of these people wind up in Vietnam together, like at the same ambush. You know,
oh yeah, like Malenfant, yeah.
And also, I did assume when I read Blind Willie and he puts Bobby's name on the placard, I was like, oh, Bobby must have died. Like, that's what's happening here. And so I was very surprised.
No, Bobby is the saint because he carried Carol. Don't you understand?
Right. Well, that also would make sense. Like, yeah.
Oh,
anyway,
I know. I'm with you 100%. But yeah.
Not a great story.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of, it almost requires a little bit of unpacking, especially between Willie and Why We're in Vietnam, which is the next story, which is about John Sullivan / Sully John from Low Men. And basically, we learn that Willie, who was one of the bullies who, attacked Carol when they were young, and John Sullivan and Ronnie Malenfant, who is kind of the one of the lowlifes in Hearts in Atlantis who's playing cards, they kind of all end up together in this skirmish in Vietnam where a helicopter falls, people are screaming and dying, Ronnie loses his mind, and there's almost starts attacking villagers, kills a woman, and basically the way that they stop him is, and it's not just him, there's multiple guys, is one of the soldiers shoots one of the guys in the head, and that's the way that they stop this sort of massacre in this village. Exactly. And then but then also Sully John's been like gravely injured, his guts are hanging out of his stomach, and Willie picks him up and carries him, Bobby and Carol to help save him, and then they become friends in the hospital and so on and so forth. So all these characters kind of mesh in this one skirmish that is kind of through both Blind Willie and Why We're in Vietnam expounded upon thoroughly and grotesquely in ways that can become a little confusing. I had to write down a lot of notes, like how do all of these various things intertwine? But yeah, let's talk about Why We're in Vietnam, which is about two veterans, John Sullivan and a man named Diffenbaker, reunite at the funeral of a third. They recall a helicopter crash, an incident, blah, 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 Ronnie Malenfant burning a Vietnamese village down as a message to the enemy. Sully, who was gravely injured in the aftermath alongside Willie, is now haunted by an old woman killed by Ronnie he calls Mama San. Sully also obsessed with Carol. They're all obsessed with Carol. I wrote that this feels less like a story and more like a diatribe, though I don't mind that. I think there's a lot of passion in this story, and I think King is sort of spilling his guts all over the page during this one about a lot of his frustrations and his feelings about the war all these years later. And I do find the ending in which John Sullivan's driving down the highway, there's a huge backup, and then all of a sudden all these sort of totems of rampant materialism and consumerism begin raining down around him on the highway: refrigerators, cell phones, giant piano. And it's, again, heavy-handed, but I actually found it quite affecting just in terms of a visual and kind of a cool because then it turns out to not be real, of course, and John has a heart attack and dies in the middle of the traffic jam, which is kind of sad and poetic. And I think he creates an interesting character, especially because Sully John was so, vibrant when he was young and such like a upbeat kid. And here he's just so broken and bedraggled. It's kind of sad. Anna, thoughts on this story?
I also really liked the surreal suburbia raining from the sky part. And it gave me a taste maybe of what I wish had been more present elsewhere. Because it is like, you're not sure if it's because it's a King story, like what could be happening here, right?
Right.
And I was a little disappointed to find it was all in his mind, but also kind of okay with that in a weird way. I think I might have liked this story of these last four. I think I might have liked it the best.
Yeah.
Even though it is, and I think it's because of that passion. I do have a thought that, again, maybe we can get more into later, but a little about King, which is that I'm curious about his own activities during this time, because he definitely didn't serve, right?
Yeah, I can fill in some of those gaps.
Yeah. And so like there's a part of me that's like, I just feel like there's a lot of anger here. But where is it coming from? And is it coming from a place of not being sure maybe that he did the right thing?
That's I think the crux of what I want to talk about when we hit themes.
Okay, because I wonder, that's sort of where I got, is because like he's valorizing these people that do make a lot of sacrifices, and it has the feel of someone who seeing in other people maybe what they wish they had done. And I'm reading way between the lines here, but I
think you have to with these stories. Yeah.
But yeah. I also really wondered if he talked to any veterans. I mean, I hope the thing is, I know from reading On Writing, he's not a believer in research. Like he writes and then he researches.
Yeah.
So I just had that thought when he's like describing the firefight and stuff, and also basically describing the firefight, and then also kind of what is it like to be a veteran and what is it like to have that kind of trauma. Yeah. I just wondered like where he's at, what he's accessing for that.
Mac, how about you? What do you think about this story?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think this is probably my favorite of the last bunch of stories. I think that it's funny because at one point, I think they jokingly say something about how the deer hunter's like a real joke and not true to life and not. But then I felt like this story was absolutely like Deer Hunter in many ways. So I don't know what he was trying to say with that. But then I thought maybe that's the research he did. I don't know. He watched a lot of Vietnam films. But I think it was seeing Sully, who's this character that you like all the kids in the first one, even though Sully's kind of like a ham. And then seeing how far apart they've grown, how different their points of view are. I think when I was younger, I really just never understood that. I never quite understood that my best friend might not be my best friend in 30 years, 40 years, and we might have completely different political beliefs, et cetera, et cetera. And just seeing kind of that stuff unfold now, and seeing him, when he talks about Carol and he's just like so dirty and mean about what she's become, and they were just like, I don't know. It just kind of, that loss of innocence is really, rough. But yeah, I thought this was really hard hitting. I don't know, that ending really took me out too. I was really got invested when the piano and the cell phone goes into the woman's head and stuff. And I was really like, whoa, like what? I didn't think this was going to happen in this story. So I really, really took me by surprise. And I think, and I was okay with how that ended as well, with it being, just the heart attack essentially. Because how do you describe that? And I'd like to think that when things like that happen, everybody's experience is totally different. But obviously, I don't know if he has ever had a heart attack, so I don't know if he would know what goes through the mind of someone doing that. But I did like it. I don't think I wanted it to be something like extra magical or Mama-san sending him a vision or something. Like
I didn't really mind it. I liked that it wasn't clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also feel like there was a way to do it that it wouldn't have been like magical, like
Right.
I was thinking like, did a airline freighter like fall out of the sky, like I was trying to come up with like reasons why it might be happening.
Me too. And it was kind of like that
including
Magnolia
magical,
moment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did wind up, I was okay, I guess I said I wasn't. I like we're all saying, I think it's the passion of the story that's really makes it kind of jump off the page.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels more believable than some of the other stories, I think.
Yeah.
It's more grounded, yeah.
Yeah.
Even though that last sequence is not at all. But
Well, he writes it in
is,
such a way
for the most
where
part,
it the surprise feels grounded, like the reactions to it feel grounded, and there's some beautiful writing, I think, in that whole kind of final pages of that story. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to say, though, it reminded me of the end of Magnolia with the frogs raining down, where I was kind of like, okay, this is inexplicable, but I'm buying it. So whether the stuff really was, I thought the same thing, like maybe a freighter was crashed in the sky and rained down, all this stuff. But I was, and going to Anna's point too about King serving, I kept thinking of the movie Platoon when I was watching this, Oliver Stone film, who has served. And I think it hits on a lot of those similar themes of, not necessarily the fog of war, but the grayness of morality that can kind of arise, and how, there are some guys there that they're identifying as like, okay, this is a bad person. They're abusing their power, but also we're sent here to kill people. So I think in Apocalypse Now, they say like charging men with murder here is like giving out speeding tickets at the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah.
Right. You're sending these people on these horrible things, and some of them are just going to lose their minds. Not to justify that at all. Like, you can't kill civilians the way that they're doing here. But I think,
but when the war is hollow, it's
right,
like,
right, and it's like you can't expect people to keep a good moral compass there when they're just surrounded by shit. I mean, the guy's intestines are coming out of his body. It's something that I couldn't even begin to fathom. So I enjoyed the study, though, of like some of the morality, and they hit on some of the similar things with Platoon, with the friendly fire, right? If they don't like a guy, or a guy's becoming a problem, you shoot him, and then you write it up as like, oh, well, he died during the war, right? And that's what happens. And that's another kind of situation that I just could not even begin to comprehend. And I don't think, anyone who has not served can really even understand that. So I like the presence of Mama-san. I thought that was kind of a cool, I don't know, like I thought it was cool too that it wasn't someone that he had killed too, right? It was somebody that he had witnessed, which is a little bit of a twist on how I would normally see this. So I didn't mind this as much. It wasn't so satisfying for me, but I agree with Randall that I thought some of the writing was very nice, and that it did feel like more of a diatribe or just kind of a study on than a narrative story for my taste.
Yeah, the idea that he didn't kill Mama-san, but he's still haunted by her, I think speaks to just the idea of complicity, and the idea of standing aside as other atrocities are happening.
And I was wondering if that applied to like the American public in a way too, of like, we're sort of complicit, right? This is, Mama-san is haunting us, and we need to acknowledge that she's there, even if we didn't participate directly. And even the thing with like Blind Willie, I was trying to think of, whether us profiting off of our actions in Vietnam were giving us money, but it's still kind of a loose connection for, sometimes it just hit over the head, and at other times I was like, is this what he's going for?
Sure. Okay, final story, which is like 5 pages long. Little epilogue. Heavenly shades of night are falling. An adult Bobby and Carol reunite at Sully's funeral. She's now using a different name after being presumed dead due to her involvement with a Weather Underground type radical group. I guess it's just sort of a stab at a happy ending. Like the gentle belief that some scrap of our childhoods can survive the crushing weight of reality. It's sort of like and I think calling it Heavenly Shades of Night Are Falling speaks to the idea that there's something dreamlike and wistful about this final thing. Like it's slight, the story, but I almost think it almost speaks to it because it's kind of like whatever hope exists in this book for these people is also very slight. So I think King doesn't like bummer endings, and this is his way of giving us a little bit of a happy ending after many stories of basically asking what the fuck is the point of any of this, and obviously we'll talk more about that later. But I guess it's like general reactions. Dan, what did you think about this story?
I took it less happy, more just kind of sad. Like there's like a nothingness to this in my mind. I think it was nice to be connected to Ted, but Ted almost exists outside of the whole Vietnam thing in my mind, right? It was it was great seeing that Carol had survived, but also seeing that she was, burned up and scarred was pretty tragic. And it's that thing of, it always affects me in literature and movies where, like what could have been, and had we only stayed connected, and you're like, oh, you kind of wasted this lifetime apart when maybe you would have been happier if you stayed together. I don't know. I didn't think much of it. It didn't have too much of an impact. I think this story plays out a little bit better in the film adaptation in a way.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I just rewatched that. I'm excited to talk about it. Mac, general thoughts on this little epilogue?
I was pretty invested only because I had lived with the film ending for so long, and I didn't realize it was just totally different, what they do with Carol. So I was really surprised when it was her. And then, but I did feel it was kind of a very sad ending, but also, I mean, like she has a family, right? And two kids,
they don't mention if she does.
Or Bobby. No, Bobby does. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a wife and 2 kids.
And so it's not like you think they're going to get together or something, but it is kind of like this little moment, reconnection that you just thought, I don't know. I mean, I think King, you're absolutely right. I think he was trying to button it with a little bit of like, Ted reconnected them, but
King likes to have his childhood romances come together for one last fuck when they're older.
But I did,
I was gonna say,
I did think though that it was interesting that, he ends it with that bit of magic, right? Because Ted is the one that connects them again, and how did he know, or did he get out, and all that stuff. And so it's like all magic's not lost, it is kind of like a little bit of a twinkle at the end to some extent, but a really fucked up twinkle.
Anna, how about you?
Okay. A question for discussion, like which is more magical? They all wind up in the same, unit in Vietnam or this happy ending, right? I never really thought about it before, but King has a very generous attitude towards one-time infidelity, if you really mean it.
Yes, he does.
If you're really in love, then it doesn't really count.
Well, do you think that they're gonna get it on?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he wants to ball her socks off, like which is they put it in one of the other stories.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think also just going to other books, like he really does have like in certain circumstances, it's perfectly acceptable to screw around on your partner. I mean, and many of the circumstances he puts people in are incredibly extraordinary circumstances for sure.
I always think about the one in The Mist when
I think about that all all the time for some reason. Like it's like in the frozen food aisle, I think, and that's why I think about it.
She's just like, your wife's dead, so why don't we fuck?
Yeah. I think about that one a lot.
So weird.
Yeah. So what did I think of it? it feels a tiny bit forced. It does feel a little bit
Yeah.
like King, like wrapping things up in a little bow.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that just wants to mention that I think it takes some agency away from Carol when he's like, "What happened?" And she's like, "I was led astray by this guy." And I understand
Yeah.
King's Dominion and everything, but like
Yeah.
the entire book, we are led to believe that she's an incredibly strong personality and
Yeah.
a leader in this, and she's the one making decisions. Then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, like this guy led me astray. I sort of wish that part had been handled maybe even a little differently. Like, I know that in King's Dominion that RF takes advantage of all kinds of violence to create chaos,
Yeah.
including well-intentioned,
Sure.
quote unquote, well-intentioned violence. But it just like robbed her of just this tiny bit of agency that I kind of didn't like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that, and I'm glad you brought up the sort of like the opportunistic side of RF is something that I want to talk about later, because I think that's how I kind of squared, because I had a negative reaction to that moment too when I first read it, but I kind of squared it, I think, with some of the themes that we're going to discuss.
Yeah, but he's like.
But I agree with you about Carol. Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like I wish that was handled just a slightly bit differently, because like
Word.
again, because she seems like such a badass for 99% of the book.
Well, just everybody is obsessed with her through
yeah,
all the
and we
stories,
don't-
and yeah.
And actually, I will say, I actually think that for a female king character, she's pretty well done.
Yeah.
Like not a saint, funny, not overly sexualized, even though everyone's obsessed with her.
But they like it's almost like a spiritual obsession rather than a romantic one.
It is.
It's almost like they're projecting their the innocence that's
Yeah.
lost.
Oh,
on-
I mean,
on-
definitely.
on
All
Carol,
of their
yeah.
obsessions. What I also think is good, and again, sort of in King, a pretty subtle trick he pulls off, which is that it's clear that everyone's obsession with her is their projection onto her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That she is her own person with her own drives and her own reasons for doing things, and all the different men that are obsessed with her are seeing in her the thing that they want to see,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and that's pretty skillful. To pull off. I think it's funny, like I don't know if I'll ever read this book again, and I didn't particularly enjoy it, although I did read the whole second half this morning. So
It took me like a month.
I read some of it last night, some of it this morning. So I didn't really savor it. But I always have I defend King. I mean, one of the biggest fights I ever got into in junior high was with my English teacher who called Stephen King junk food reading, and like I wound up getting like sent to sit. I had to go to detention because I got kind of.
You're a martyr.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
on a Heart of a Lion.
I remember I brought up John Updike. I don't know how I got it, but I was like, she was like, if you write that much in every year, like you're just writing it like you're writing popcorn and potato chips. And I was like, what about John Updike? I don't know what the fuck. I'm like 14 years old.
Amazing.
I think my mom was a big Updike fan. Anyway, I defend him to the mat. I mean, that's why I'm on this podcast about what a skillful writer he is. Take away the magic, and it does force him to like see you. I mean, I hate kind of to say it, but like you do really get to see what his skills are,
Mhm.
And as much as there were things I didn't like about all of this, that stuff with Carol, I mean, being able to pull that off, and also this question of what makes people do the right thing.
Yeah. Which we'll
Like-
talk more about. Yeah.
Those pretty kudos
Yeah.
to him. Sorry.
Cool. Well, before we talk about themes, I want to talk a little bit about Hearts in Suspension, which is a 2016 book that was published by the University of Maine. It was edited by Jim Bishop, who was a former University of Maine English instructor who taught King when King was just 18. This is sort of the official description of it. It's a communal writing effort of King and his classmates and friends of the time, all of whom seek to illuminate those years when a landslide of societal change took center stage. An unpopular, undeclared war raged in Vietnam. Civil rights marches and demonstrations were staged in the South. On campuses, student activism grew, as did drug use, and a much more liberal mindset began to take hold. The book features a new essay by King called, well, not new anymore, but it was when it came out, 5 to 1, 1 and 5. And then there's also 4 installments of King's Garbage Truck, which you can hear us discuss on the archive series that we have on our Patreon. We're going to be talking about the latter half of his garbage truck columns, including the ones that are featured in this next week, I believe. And a reprint of Hearts in Atlantis is in there, as well as 12 essays from fellow students and friends from King's college days, and then a gallery of period photographs and documents. The real, I think, kind of takeaway from this book is the essay 5 to 1, 1 and 5, which is described as King doing his best to discuss what it was like to be on the precipice of adulthood during Vietnam, the advent of napalm, the Kent murders, and the deaths of Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., Fred Hampton, and more. And I think reading that in concert with the book reveals a lot of the what was actually autobiographical in Hearts in Atlantis. Some notes I took. Just obviously he went to the University of Maine in Roanoke. He arrived to college a quote unquote Goldwater Republican. And I didn't know specifically what that phrase meant. And when I looked it up, it was essentially support for small government at the federal level, free enterprise, fiscal conservatism, and anti-communist foreign policy, basically less interested in social issues and family matters. Like a lot of modern Republicans, where it's all about, like
he was kind of anti-culture war.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he was pro ish gay rights. I mean, for the time, and
right.
Like one of the things he said famously is like, I don't care if you're gay in the army as long as you can shoot straight.
Yeah.
So
it's that kind of Republican where it's not about the social stuff; it's more about the fiscal stuff. And in real life, his best friend was named Flip. In the book, it's Skip. His roommate is pretty much the exact same person, down to the kind of subtle leftism and ambitions to be a dentist. King never had a problem with cards. His problem was booze. He talks about it a lot in the essay. But a pal of his did go the Malenfant route, flunking out because of his obsession with hearts and joining the army. So he kind of took that one instance and made that kind of the collective hysteria of this. And a cool thing about the book is all the royalties generated went to the campus publishing house. So they were able to, publish a lot of stuff they otherwise would not have afforded to, because you're still getting those King numbers. And there's still copies available. I saw some people on the Discord picking it up. And I want to thank Matt Morris, our listener, who took some scans for me that really helped. And also Bryant Burnett, who is kind of our King historian, Losers Club historian. He got me a copy of the essay, which, because I didn't have time to order the book. It's also pretty expensive. But, and then here's a few things King said around that time of the release of Suspension. He said, coming to the University of Maine after growing up in a small town was like all at once you discover a brand new world. I know that I was shocked the first time that I heard people challenge my beliefs because I wasn't used to that. Little by little, my eyes were opened. Everybody's were after a while, if you were in school and if you were paying attention and using your intellect and listening to teachers and everything. He also said, my college years were such a blur of classes, homework, events, card games, drinking at Pat's that I thought to myself, I can't really recapture it. But as a writer, I know that there's a kind of hypnosis that kicks in. And if you can find a place to start, a lot of times the act of writing itself will open things up. And that's what happened with me. The more I wrote, the more I remembered. And this is just a quote from 5 to 1, 1 and 5. I'm going to read a few, but this is a shorter one that I think just kind of helps set up the mindset of being in college at that time from 1966 to 1970. He said, the war was the context. It was the steady drumbeat of our lives, sometimes in the foreground, sometimes in the background, but always there. Just when you thought it was as bad as it could get, it got worse. Which obviously in a very different way, but sort of reminds me of the Trump years when it felt like whenever you thought it can't get more annoying and more despairing, it somehow did. Obviously, very different times. I'm not comparing Trump to war, but, it was not fun.
I don't know.
Sure.
Like,
I think everybody has their own
precipice
approach.
of the death of democracy, which,
Mm-hmm.
counts.
No, I hear you. So this is King talking about his political evolution in 5 to 1, which sort of dovetails, I think, with some of the things we're going to discuss about Hearts in Atlantis. What I'm trying to say is that I brought a suitcase filled with conservative beliefs to college, along with my Webcore phonograph. I could listen to Dylan sing Masters of War while supporting troop escalation in Vietnam and never see the conflict. My wife still chortles over the fact that 7 weeks after I turned 21, I voted for Richard M. Nixon. Nixon said he had a plan, my wife says, and Steve believed him. Yes, okay, I believed him, but it's really not that funny. By then, I had begun to have my doubts about Vietnam, give me that much, but in the end decided to trust Nixon when he said he would reveal his secret plan once he was elected. The secret plan turned out to be more escalation, and his betrayal of trust, both mine and the nation's, was part of my slow but steady evolution from moderate Republican of the John Reed and Margaret Chase Smith stripe to the left-wing Democrat I became in my last year of formal education. The turning was slow and sometimes painful, but the seed was planted in October of 1966 by a roommate who wore his hair short and never left the dorm without his freshman beanie, at least until that first Maine Black Bears touchdown had been scored. God bless Harold C. Whiting of Whiting, Maine, who began that job of opening up my mind. That opening is, of course, what college is really meant to do. And the character, I can't remember the name of his roommate in Hearts in Atlantis, but that character is essentially that person that he is talking about there. He also talks about this is another section I want to read from that essay, which I think helps tease out some of that. I can still access the feel of those strange days, and often stranger nights, sure. Not long ago, I was startled to the point of tears when I heard Scott McKenzie singing San Francisco on my satellite radio. It was the innocent optimism of it, I think. You're going to meet some gentle people there, he sings. But in an essay that purports to contain at least a modicum of truth, I can only do so obliquely. I came closer in the novella Hearts in Atlantis. Essays, even informal ones like this, are always a handshake. Fiction is a kiss, ideally with the mouth open, so that the writer's breath intermingles with the reader's. Even in Hearts, the truth about the 60s as I knew them is only fleetingly expressed. For me, remembering college is like taking a bite of cotton candy. It fills the mouth but melts almost at once, leaving just a lingering taste of sweetness behind. What I remember best is how completely and wonderfully wrong we were about so many things, and how blind we were allowed to be, at least for a little while, to the world's harder truths. That is a near-perfect definition of mercy, I think. I believed I had discovered true love with my high school girlfriend. I believed my novel, Sword in the Darkness, would be a prize-winning bestseller. I believed passionately in the Vietnam War for 3 semesters, and just as passionately that it was wrong for another 5. I believed we could change American society, maybe even the world, and ignored how every cause, an end to sexism, an end to racism, an end to the draft, an end to the war, eventually degenerated into childish arguments with the administration, so often just stand-ins for our parents, about our right to speak out about these things in the first place. In many cases, we lost sight of the larger issues and fell to squabbling about minutiae like long hair and bell-bottom pants. Yet sometimes even a dose of reality could be okay. Sometimes we were brought face to face with the simple fact that we weren't at the center of the universe after all, and maybe that wasn't so bad. And I think in concert with that section, he also touches back on one of the epigraphs of the book, which is "We Blew It," which he credits to Easy Rider. And I think that speaks to kind of the first theme. Well, not the first theme, but one of the themes I want to talk about. But and I guess on it, like when I mentioned earlier about the cards being sort of, you know, a prolonged aspect of childhood and like a way to not engage with the broader world. I think I picked up on that from this essay where he talks about the idea of being oblivious to the larger world. But I do think, especially when we're talking King, I think your observation about the addiction is also right, because the addiction language is there. But I do also think that what he was trying to do was show how the cards served as a substitute for not engaging with kind of the issues that adults have to face, you know?
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I completely agree. Can I jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
There's something in that quote that you just read that I am caught by and didn't get from the story and kind of wish I had, which is this idea that the protests against sort of noble and worthy things devolve into arguments with your parents.
Yeah.
That's such a true thing. And it's not really in there. Like, I mean, parents show up as being disapproving, right?
Yeah.
But in both the times, like with Nate, that's the roommate, and with Carol, what the role of the parental disapproval is like, well, you should still do the right thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And Carol like argues really vehemently, I'm not just doing this because my dad, right? And we believe her, I guess, in the context in that moment. I mean, so I guess y'all all mentioned like your own college experience and what what politics was sort of taking place in the background. I want to quickly mention that I went to University of Chicago, where fun goes to die. So there were no card games, there were no video games, there was no gaming, there was no nothing, there were no party. Well, there were parties, but we were very serious about them. So I didn't have any experience with anybody doing anything really distracting them from their studies. Like, honestly. But this is the first, I was there during the first Gulf War, and I was there during the early 90s kind of NARAL protests. There was a first big march on Washington. I remember I took a bus with my best friend for my very first march on Washington in like 1992. And that's maybe why I kind of felt really hard when you mentioned that piece about are we really doing the right thing for the right reasons?
Mm-hmm.
You know? Because I thought about it a lot at the time. My parents are pretty liberal, so it was never about rebelling against them. But I still think a lot about the merit badges that especially like we straight white people want to earn.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Whatever, like kind of all people with all kinds of privilege, like wanting to like make up for it somehow, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Anyway, I don't know. I think that kind of fits in with some of this.
Yeah, I can tease out some of the thoughts I had in that front, because one of the things I have in my notes here, I called it a double-edged sword, but one of the things that I took from this book after thinking about it for a while is that there's sort of a profound sense of regret and dispassion that seems to grip all of the characters as they get older, whether they fought in the war or against it. Like when Pete talks about being older, and this is somebody who is described in the story, and he's very similar to King, because King talks in the essay about how, no, he actually, got his draft deferred because he had burst eardrums and he had another health issue. So he wasn't going to be drafted. And it's, but he was a protester. Like he's somebody who, took his anti-war stance seriously, went to a lot of protests. Although he talks about how he was going to hitchhike to Chicago to
I was gonna say, I don't think he was in Chicago.
No,
we would know about that.
He didn't make it. He tried to go and he was gonna hitchhike, and it just didn't. He writes about it in the essay. I can't remember exactly what happened, but basically some kind of roadblock came and he just went back to Maine. Like he was on the road for a while, but he didn't make it to Chicago, and he feels like shit that he didn't. And I think that feeling like shit, it feeds into all of this, because when Pete talks about being older, this is a guy who didn't go to war and adopted this anti-war stance. He talks about drinking, he talks about gambling, he talks about his marriage in a way that doesn't make him sound particularly happy, and he sounds like he lives with a lot of regret. And Carol, I think, also has her own regrets, which, relates to kind of her dalliance with this revolutionary group. And what I find interesting is that I think what King is trying to get at is that his generation, the generation who kind of lived through Vietnam, there was a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing, where the people who went to war, who were passionate about it, went there. And I'm of course not speaking, I'm kind of speaking in the way King is speaking here, which is, this isn't everybody. This is sort of his view of it, which is that the people who went to war, got there, experienced pure fucking hell, and realized that they really weren't the good guys in this war. And they witnessed a lot of horror, and they witnessed a lot of innocent people getting killed, and they came home with a lot of issues and a lot of drug addictions and drinking problems and a lot of regret. And the people who protested, all they did was watch the world sort of get consumed by more greed, more wars, more capitalism, and also feel like we blew it, which is, and that's something that King touches on in that essay, which is that all the things that we were passionate about and fighting for, they all devolved into these petty arguments, like because we could never collectively come together enough in ways that really move the needle. Or at least I think that's kind of what he's getting at here. It's sort of that question of like, was all the protests, the idealism, was it for nothing? Whereas the people who went to war, it's like, were the bombings, the firefights, the deaths, were they for nothing? Was it all for nothing? And Sully has a moment where he sort of compares the people who went to war with the people who protested it. He says they were brave kids, and if their bravery had been wasted in a war made by pig-headed old men, did that mean the bravery was of no account? For that matter, was Carol Gerber's cause wrong because a bomb had gone off at the wrong time? Shit, lots of bombs had gone off at the wrong time in Vietnam. What was Ronnie Malenfant, when you got right down to it, but a bomb that had gone off at the wrong time? And so I guess like what I pull from it is that lingering sensation that one is not doing enough. Like everyone sort of feels like they didn't do enough because that whole era was marked by so much failure and so much death and so much depression. And I think that there's also, I think what you can weave into that is the concept of survivor's guilt, self-preservation. And if we want to take that a step further, we can talk about Low Men, where Bobby feels like he stood by as an injustice occurred. And so I think like that to me is what's, I think, at the core of these stories is a sense that we stood by as horrible things happened, whether we were in the war or whether we didn't go to war. And I think we've already touched on some of those ideas, but I think that, and it also reminds me of that quote we touched on with Low Men, which is about how this is anti-genre fiction, where like the adventure never begins, like, nothing ever actually is accomplished. And I think that speaks in a way to the rest of these stories as well, where nobody feels as if they won in this kind of situation. I don't know. Do any of these ideas click at all?
Yeah, I mean, also, mentioning Loman weirdly, like the idea of, Bobby not going with Ted, right? Like you could see that as him not going to the war, not going to the front lines, and then also the Loman and that whole thing is so nebulous, and he doesn't know why any of that's happening, and that's kind of very much like Vietnam. Everybody was like, "Why are we over there?" But yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree, Randall. I think that's absolutely the backdrop of this whole spiel here.
It's funny you mentioned that, Max. I was just having that same thought, and it didn't really occur to me until this conversation of Ted being dragged off to fight in a war that's really not his business, and just how that just on a broad scale is, the idea of like a draft or getting his little AWOL vacation and then being dragged back to the front lines. And like Anna, so we have like, I think with our age, because we were all, I believe, starting college at the start of the second Gulf War, and there's probably a similar vibe on campus. And we weren't just playing video games. We had the technology, but it allowed us in some ways to mobilize a little quicker, because this is still pre-social media, but it was a lot of people our age that were sort of running. It's before the older people really invaded that space.
Older people invaded that space.
No, but it's true though, because I remember when they opened up Facebook. No, I'm not saying you. I'm saying older. No.
I also didn't mean to imply that there was nothing happening when y'all were there.
But it wasn't on the same level though. I don't feel like it was. At least when I was in college, it didn't feel like the campus was alive and there were protests on campus, and maybe there were, but I just don't remember it hadn't
in the way I think it was in the late 60s and even during the Trump years. I don't think it had invaded culture to the degree that it did.
And that's what I'm saying is it existed. It existed more in the digital domain, because I remember being on message boards and and it's that cyber activism. How much does it really accomplish? But we had just had the September 11th attacks, Afghanistan, Iraq, and we were all kind of almost like a domino effect here, where we were like, what country are we going to invade next? And being 18 years old as a male, you're kind of afraid. You're like, if they do a draft, like, am I going to be...
Post 9/11, I was worried about
the draft. It was very nerve-wracking. And then comparing that to the Floyd protest, which were more recent, that's probably the biggest I've seen people mobilize, because now everyone is sort of plugged into this digital space, but we also tie it back to the boots on the ground that Anna was talking about marching on Washington. So it's kind of come full circle in a way. But yeah, just being there in the early 2000s, it was interesting because people had an awareness, but we didn't really take action. And, the first Gulf War was covered extensively by news networks and whatnot. And the second Gulf War was covered extensively, but we still, for some reason, we didn't go there and protest in person as at the same level, I think, as other generations. We might have had philosophical disagreements with it, but we didn't have the physical, show up and protest. And I think that's very interesting how you can even go back to the Vietnam era and King saying, like, did we do enough to protest? Or, was it enough that our minds were changing and opening up? Because he says he supported the war, and then eventually he didn't support the war. And I was brought up in a pretty conservative household, and I remember undergoing a political evolution at that age as well. And it was less so, my teachers are teaching me or changing my mind, but just being around other people with different ideas. And I think that was the biggest impact it had, just in relation to like the essay that King wrote.
I will try to keep this story very short. So number one, I remember sitting in the student lounge of my dorm in my freshman year and watching the bombs fall, on Baghdad. And that being the first time anyone kind of seen anything like that, right? CNN carrying live a war, and I remember going down to Daily Plaza like the next day. And I mean, to the extent, like, I actually took all this pretty fucking seriously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing all that stuff on campus, and God, I did street theater to protest like Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas. Like, I'm so sorry, I did street theater.
It was for your purpose there.
Good cause.
And in fact, this is the part of the story I'm going to try to keep short. A lot of us were really interested in all these larger political causes, but they were mainly like off-campus causes, right? Like, we were trying to do stuff involved off-campus. And then sort of what fell in our lap was an opportunity to run student government. The people that had been running student government, who were largely kind of conservative nerds, but there's not a lot of power in a student government, right? So who cares? Like, who votes in those elections? They had gotten caught ballot stuffing. And it was covered in the New York Times. It was very funny. They actually Xeroxed ballots and literally stuffed them. So yeah, they got caught. So they had to have a special election, and a bunch of us in the progressive kind of different student groups decided to run as a slate. And we did. And we won. Nice. And our primary purpose was like to assure funding for like the student groups that we thought were important, including like the campus radio station and the chess club and the Model UN, and then also all the various like political groups, including the conservatives. And I was one of the people that was elected to serve. And we also, the main thing we did was give away money. That's what student governments do, right? Like, to fund various like events and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And I promise this has a point. And I just remember going to my very first meeting, and like, people, like, it becoming this thing where like people were asking, like, can we get enough, like this, Near East Student Association, we're gonna make Indian food to feed people during finals, right? And we want to put up flyers for it. And these people that I'd run with being like, okay, well, where are you going to get the flyers made? Are you going to pay 5 cents or are you going to pay 2.5 cents? Like, where are you going to put them? Like, this like nitty gritty fucking shit, right? Like, and I'm just like, did we run for government to do this? Like, we have tons of fucking money. Like, why are we turning into like anyone who gets power and just fights over just pointless shit, And I just remember after that, I just voted to give everybody everything they asked for. I just like
penny wise, pound foolish, like.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I mean, it's not even abuse of power. It's just like doing shit to remind people that you can withhold something from them.
Getting lost in the sauce. It's funny you mentioned too, because Johnson looms in the back of some of these stories. And in that Robert Caro book, Johnson actually cheated to win his college government elections. So there's a long history of that going back.
And
go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan.
I hope that story had a point for you.
I think it made a lot of sense too. And it's how you get, once you get that seat of power, though, some people, they get sort of lost in it. I think that's unfortunate. If we see that in a lot of contemporary elections where we put people in on promises of this is what's going to happen, and then once they get there, they sort of.
And that's
they dull that edge that they had when they came in.
Yeah, like what I like about your story on it is because it speaks to the idea that it's not like everyone becomes corrupted, right? It's just that you get swept up in the bureaucracy or the sort of, like the bullshit of it all. And then that's, I think, when King talks about this idea of Atlantis, which I think is a bit muddled. I don't think he quite pulls off the metaphor. But when he's talking about Atlantis, I think what he's speaking about is the moment when the idealism could exist purely before the reality of it sinks in. He calls it stupid at one point, which I think is funny. Like he's talking about Atlantis, and he says, and I hear Donovan Leitch singing in his sweet and stupid song about the continent of Atlantis, lyrics that still seem profound to me in the watches of the night when I can't sleep. The older I get, the harder it is to let go of that song's stupidity and hold on to its sweetness. I have to remind myself that we were smaller then, small enough to live our brightly hued lives under the mushrooms, all the time believing them to be trees, shelter from the sheltering sky. I know that doesn't make any real sense, but it's the best I can do. Hail Atlantis. That's from the story Hearts in Atlantis, and I think it speaks to that concept of the pureness of the idealism. And then, I guess it can tie to Low Man with the idea of that loss of innocence that is witnessed. And then the sort of near the end of the story when, he loses Carol and he says, hearts are tough, she said. Most times hearts don't break. And I'm sure that's right. But what about then? What about who we were then? What about Hearts in Atlantis? Which I guess is, sort of his way of saying, it's horrible that idealism and that sense of pureness or innocence had to shatter, because it's kind of impossible to recapture that. Like it's kind of like Bobby learning about his mom. He's never going to be able to see her the same way, and that's, I think, why I find this book so sad, because it just reminds me of my old idealism in certain aspects of my life.
But it's also true that when we are children and we are idealistic and we do the right thing, it's often because we don't know what the costs are.
Yeah.
And we're not taking it seriously.
100%.
And I think what I like about this, and what's somewhat unusual for King, is the idea that their childhood is not all that great. I mean, well, he knows it's not that great, but that losing your innocence is actually something that can have beneficial effects.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
That to lose your innocence means to make choices in full knowledge that you might be fucked, or that you might not be doing the right thing. When kids decide to do whatever they think is the right thing, like, it's pretty clear. Like, I know, like, I'm going to save the princess or whatever, right? Like, when adult decides to do the right thing, we're often like racked with guilt about, like, I don't know, like, this actually might not be the right thing, but I'm going to do the best I can.
That's
actually
point.
Carol's bomb. Like, Carol's bomb is a sort of an example of that, right?
Yeah, and I think Stokely, the whole thing with Stokely at the end of Hearts in Atlantis is too, because it speaks to that right thing that you do before you be, like, I think with Carol, it's that's that decision that has multiple angles to it. But with Stokely, I think the reason that Pete is so, like, he loves that moment, like, that's the moment that stands out to him, because I think it was the one time, like, him and his friends collectively did something good together, like, they did something for the right reason that stood against authority, and they actually came out on top. And how often does that ever happen? And it's a pure moment.
I love that Stokely is also, but complicates that a little. Right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, they did the right thing, but it's still not quite pure.
Right.
Like, it's still a little, not that they should have let him die, but, like, I do think, like, even the language, which is, definitely, like, un-PC language about him, but I think actually works, in that situation, because they definitely did think of him as a cripple.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's this book, it's funny, like, maybe I will reread it. There's stuff in it that I find really interesting and does capture my imagination. Like, I think that whole scene and Stokely as a character is pretty great. Like, I wish there were other characters. I think there's other angry, wounded people, obviously, in King's books, but the specific idea of someone who's, like, has a pretty, severe disability and is doing their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I like that. I like that he did that. I like he didn't make him a super nice guy.
Yeah.
Right. He wasn't, like, holier than thou or something. Yeah.
He was kind of a dick, like, all people can be.
Yeah. Dan, what were you going to say?
Oh, not to backtrack too much, but just as we're talking about like the Gulf Wars, the Vietnam War, and the loss, the childhood comprehension, I think back to World War II and how even as a boy, I was taught like that was the good war, right? It was good versus evil, and that was easy for me to understand. And then Vietnam was a little more gray, and as I get older, you're like, oh, you look back on World War II and you're like, this wasn't as black and white as I understood it to be when I was being brought up, right? And then you look at these people who survived the Vietnam War, and King says came in supporting it and then changed his mind. So you come in with this idea of no, I'm naive. I think I know what I'm talking about, but this is clearly good versus evil. We have to stop communism. And then over time, the more you examine it, the more you lose that sort of childhood innocence, and you start to understand there are barriers in place and there's repercussions to actions. It's not just a 1 to 2. There's a bunch of other things that will be affected. That gives me this subtext in the book that I didn't quite get when I was reading it. Like I didn't enjoy reading all of this. It's fun doing this discussion afterwards and,
yes.
Pulling it out of it. Because I don't know that I want to go back and read it right away.
Much
but
more fun talking about it than I actually
It really
had
is though fun
it.
hearing this. Because one of you guys will say something and I'm like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. And that'll lead to this. And it's, just in general, I do love doing this podcast with all of you guys. So happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
And also to the listeners for doing too. But I like hearing the listeners' feedback as well because, hopefully we're giving them something and then they run with it. And then we're like, wow, I didn't really think of it like that.
This is going to be one of those stories that's like, actually Hearts and Atlantis is a 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Talking about Randall.
No, but it's an enjoyable
think
experience.
Blind Willie is going to make it like there's a certain nose level I can't.
Oh, I
get
agree.
to.
Yeah. Speaking of Blind Willie, I guess I thought a lot about what we were just talking about the idea of this like pure selfless action, like what they did for Stokely, and I think the mirror is Bobby carrying Carol in Lowman, which is an incident that Carol remembers in Hearts in Atlantis, but also Willie remembers in Blind Willie. And I think one of the paragraphs I read like 3 times because I was having trouble wrapping my brain around it was in Blind Willie, and this sort of wistful reaction that Willie has. I'm just going to read it really quick. In any case, he has been protected, and in no case does he believe he can put God aside. God is in the picture. God marked him in 1960 when he first helped Harry Doolin tease Carol and then helped Harry beat her. That occasion of sin has never left his mind. What happened in the grove of trees near Field B stands for everything else. He even has Bobby Garfield's glove to help him remember. Willie doesn't know where Bobby is these days and doesn't care. He kept track of Carol as long as he could, but Bobby doesn't matter. Bobby ceased to matter when he helped her. Willie saw him help her. He didn't dare come out and help her himself. He was afraid of what Harry might do to him, afraid of all the kids Harry might tell, afraid of being marked. But Bobby dared. Bobby helped her then. Bobby punished Harry Doolin later that summer, and by doing these things, probably just for doing the first of them, Bobby got well. Bobby got over. He did what Willie didn't dare to do. He rolled with it and got over, got well, and now Willie has to do all the rest. And that's a lot to do. Sorry is a full-time job and more. Why, even with 3 of him working at it, he can barely keep up. And I was like puzzling over this concept of getting over, getting well. And I guess it's just that, I guess it's not as complicated as perhaps I was making it. I think it's simply that Willie stood by and was complicit in a violent act, and then stood by and watched as someone else did the right thing. And Bobby then doesn't have to live with the guilt that he lives with because Bobby did that thing. And,
right.
Go ahead.
Well, number one, I don't blame you for being confused. I don't think it's a very good paragraph.
I agree.
Right? Like it's kind of a shitty paragraph. Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of repeat. There's that whole story. We all agree. I also think, but I do think I'll tease out something that a subtlety that I only would have gotten if we're all having this discussion, which is he doesn't realize actually Bobby's marked too. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That Bobby has something that he did that he considers incredibly cowardly in his life, that he didn't do the right thing and feels bad for it, for at least a while. I mean, I think we all assume that the reason why Bobby starts acting out, right, is that
totally,
he didn't go with Ted.
Right.
So I do think that's interesting, right? Like to assume that the people who we think did the right thing then lead a life that's like pure and good and that they are heroes, when really we just saw them do the right thing in this one fucking moment. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like, and that actually also gets into the Sully story, right?
Right.
Because there's Ronnie does the right thing in one moment. He helps rescue the people from the helicopters, you know, and if you had only seen that scene, you would think that he was a decent person.
Yep.
You know? So I don't know how intentional all that is. But
it's all baked in. Like, that's the thing with the themes in this book is I think they're really knotted together. Like, I felt like in putting together my notes for this, I was pulling at knots, because I think that a lot of these thematic ideas are there, but they're wrapped up in paragraphs like the one I just read, which is like a train wreck, you know? But I'm like trying to pull the themes
But
from
it lies right next to this idea that I didn't do enough, is this assumption that someone else did better than me. And someone else is living the life of morality that I myself fell short on. And that's sort of interesting to, you know, he has this weird swipe at AA, right? That I always kind of laugh. Like, he must have some, like everyone who does AA has some, you know, mixed feelings about the whole program.
Sure.
But, you know, one of the things that gets drilled into your head in AA is to stop fucking doing that. Like, you when you see people do good or bad things, and when you compare, you know, compare and despair is like the catchphrase, right? Is like, you can never assume from what you see of someone that you know them, and that you should not, and that comparing yourself to them will lead to heartbreak.
Yeah.
It's social media today.
Right.
Everyone's always putting well, I would say maybe it's social media of the past, because now everyone's just putting out their complaints about everything, not necessarily their best selves or the look at me, look at this
like
great photo of me doing this.
It's Instagram versus Twitter, you know.
Yeah.
It's there are influencers out there. Like, no, I mean, I think it's a lesson that everyone needs to learn. I just find it interesting that I'm sure this is something that King has gone over in the rooms.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that just because you see someone do a heroic thing, it doesn't mean that you're not capable of that yourself, or that person has a better life or is a better person. And just because you do a heroic thing and someone else makes a different choice doesn't mean that you're better than them, because you have no idea what that person did in other parts of their life where they might have done something heroic, you know?
Yeah. And I think the other theme that kind of emerges from, you know, what you just said, Anna, which is like what you're saying about the comparing aspect, but also the sense of regret that I didn't do enough, is the anger that comes out. And Why We're in Vietnam is a very angry story. We said we liked it for the passion, and I think part of that is because King is really kind of, you know, screaming into the void in this one. Like, it's kind of hard to just say this is a character when the guy starts ranting about sort of the ways in which we failed. It feels so personal. I just want to read this section that I believe Diffenbaker, who is like the buddy of Sully, he says, "We filled up our wallets on the stock market and went to the gym and booked therapy sessions to get in touch with ourselves. South America is burning, Malaysia's burning, fucking Vietnam is burning, but we finally got past that self-hating thing. Finally got to like ourselves, so that's okay." And I think it's like, you know, you do all the things to tell yourself that you weren't the bad guy or whatever, that you didn't fuck up. But that sense of unease still lingers. And then it's kind of vomiting forth. He says, "I like lots of people our age when they're one by one, but I loathe and despise my generation, Sully. We had an opportunity to change everything. We actually did. Instead, we settled for designer jeans, 2 tickets to Mariah Carey at Radio City Music Hall, frequent flyer miles, James Cameron's Titanic, and retirement portfolios. The only generation even close to us in pure selfish self-indulgence is the so-called lost generation of the 20s, and at least most of them had the decency to stay drunk. We couldn't even do that. Man, we suck. You know, the price of selling out the future, Sully John, you can never really leave the past. You can never get over. My thesis is that you're really not in New York at all. You're in the Delta, leaning back against a tree, stoned and rubbing bug dope on the back of your neck. Packer's still the man because it's still 1969. Everything you think of as your later life is a big fucking pot bubble, and it's better that way. Vietnam is better. That's why we stay there." I would love 2 tickets to Mariah Carey, but I think I think that's that we built ourselves lives of luxury despite despite not doing enough when it mattered, you know? Like the world's burning around us, but we have our comforts. And there's a guilt that can be associated with that. And I think, you know, I feel like I've heard that argument a million times in various movies and things like that. Like, I think, you know, you mentioned, Anna, that there's a lot of stuff here that that King hasn't touched on in some way before. And I think that is true. But I think it's like the unbridled sort of passion and the anger that kind of manifests that makes a statement like this hit really hard. And then, of course, obviously, it leads to the reigning objects of consumerism coming down later, and how those things become overwhelming in our lives as we go on. But that idea of a wasted generation, I think, is interesting. And I don't know. I feel like I see that sentiment pop up more and more. I mean, I see so many self-loathing millennials, self-loathing Gen Xers, you know, and it's depressing, but I don't know. It's compelling in its own way too. Did you guys take note of that section?
I have to jump in.
Oh, sure.
Sorry. Like, I just want to point out that there was a pretty good essay recently. I can't remember who wrote it. Something other people have pointed out too, which is that when we talk about generations often, in this kind of discussion, we're talking about middle-class white people.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right. And so that's a little bit of something that I have, like, it always kind of irks me about King is like when we sold out, what he means is that people who look like him sold out.
Yeah.
Right? Like there are
well, it's
plenty
coming
of people,
from a character of that era, of that type.
right?
Yeah.
But also, I think King himself, like when he's
absolutely.
thinking about how he's disappointed in his generation, he's talking about like middle class white dudes who made a choice to have a career rather than do whatever it is that they might have done. But like,
yeah, that's his
there are
perspective.
AIDS activists doing very different things throughout the 80s. Right?
Oh, totally.
Like,
yeah.
There were people doing all kinds of, there were like the NARAL protests and the pro-choice protests and like, and so I just feel like I have to point out that it's very much self-loathing.
Oh yeah.
And I wish he would open that up. Like I actually loved the one aside where he noted he didn't know any black people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I was like,
that.
oh my God, like a little bit of self-awareness
Can't
here.
believe it.
Right?
But isn't that true for a lot of boomers, you know? I mean,
it is.
I can speak
and
that my parents would probably say the same thing.
Totally. And I just wish that self-awareness would have carried on just like a tiny bit more.
Yeah.
To be like, other people are doing shit. And also other people didn't get to make the choice about whether or not they're going to be activists or whether or not they're going to struggle against capitalism.
Yeah.
Because they are, to put it, you know, to coin a phrase, in the shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
It's people who look like Stephen King that get to make the choice to put down the struggle against capitalism, the struggle against racism, the struggle against patriarchy. He gets to decide, I'm not going to play that game anymore.
Right. Right. That's a good point.
Other people don't.
Yeah, I do support that in general, and I get personally annoyed too when people paint with such a broad stroke for like millennials, boomers, Gen Z.
Sure.
You know, it's like for every Nobel Prize winner, I can show you a serial killer from any generation, right? So it's I think it's just King showing his age a little bit here.
Oh, I know. This is very much boomer ranting. But I still kind of like it, just for reasons that we've discussed. But I think the sort of last theme I want to touch on before we move on, and obviously please jump in with other thoughts, but I just kind of wrote at the bottom of my notes, what is the point of anything? And I have this quote from Heavenly Shades of Night Are Falling that this really bummed me out when I read this. Which was this is when before he sees Carol, she returns, but he says her death canceled not only the idea of magic, but it seemed to Bobby the very purpose of childhood. What good was it if it brought you to such things? Bad eyes and bad blood pressure were one thing, bad ideas, bad dreams, and bad ends were another. And after a while, you wanted to say to God, come on, big boy, quit it. You lost your innocence when you grew up, all right? Everyone knew that. But did you have to lose your hope as well? What good was it to kiss a girl on the Ferris wheel when you were 11 if you were to open the paper 11 years later and learn that she had burned to death in a slummy little house on a slummy little dead-end street? What good was it to remember her beautiful alarmed eyes or the way the sun had shone in her hair? And, you know, he gives us the specter of
Bummer.
Carol returning, so we don't have to ask that question. But the thing is,
Right.
That question still lingers, I think, at the end. And that's the thing I think that broke my heart a little bit. And obviously, you know, this is he's writing from a limited perspective. But I think I've struggled. I think everyone's struggled with those things a little bit. Like, I think so many beautiful memories can become corrupted over time because of just, the nature of reality and the changing of the times.
Sorry.
What's up?
The nature of reality is a problem.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's just sad, though.
I think
isn't
with Carol, too, I kind of thought of her as like that Brigitte Bardot poster, where throughout the novel, people were looking toward that poster for various reasons. It's easy to be like, oh, it's just for sex, but it's also like, oh, companionship and beauty and this woman. But, she doesn't look the same on that poster for the rest of her life, Brigitte Bardot. And it's the same with Carol. Like, they can look to her for whatever reason to fill that holes in their soul. But, the reality is here at the end, it's like, she's different than what I imagined her as.
Yeah. Cool. Any other final thoughts on the themes? There's so much, but I feel like we did a pretty good job of grasping, I think, the wider breadth of it all. Cool. All right. Let's pop on over to our sections, which is probably just going to be a bit of a lightning round a little bit. But do we have any misery?
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away! Slipped away! She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my misery!
Annie!
Is there anything in this that made us miserable?
I think we kind of talked about a lot of that, but really, I think Blind Willie could be tightened up.
I love that's just such like a broad one. It's just Blind Willie misery. Yeah.
It just, and then I think pivoting from Loman to Hearts and it's so jarring, tonally different. Like, oh, we're just gonna do a straight-laced story about like being in college during Vietnam now. After like dealing with the Dark Tower stuff, I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you pivot to a more, straightforward story, but yeah, mine are kind of like more.
They're more broad,
nebulous.
In that sense.
Yeah, they're more broad. Yeah, but there wasn't.
Mine are very minuscule.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
they're very small. Like just this sentence. I topped the trick with the bitch, held my nose and honked at Hugh. That was how we said booyah in the quaint old days of the 60s. It's like I'm talking to my grandpa. I wrote down the phrase fucking homo major domo. I can't imagine anybody would ever say that. And it's not even because he calls him a homo. It's just that phrase. The phrase butt parched throat. I don't even know what that means. But yeah.
He talks about the fungal growth underneath his balls.
Mike texted me about that today and said, that's so specific. It's got to be true.
Yeah. Like it's a little too specific really, for me.
It's the Jordy Verrill fungus.
Yeah.
This is sort of pound cake and sort of misery, but like I have a just pet peeve when people lose their virginity and it's ecstatic. Like it's just like the most perfect sex of all time.
Somebody
like,
just said that in our Discord.
Okay, like it's just a pet peeve. It's just like there can be sex that's just mind blowing and transcendental. I'm sure, but usually not.
This guy's having Kama Sutra sex on his first time.
Like, I mean, maybe that's again like we're gonna make the list of things that are magical in this book. Like, that'll be up there.
Pizza Dynamo. Dan, how about you?
Also, the number of songs that play while they're fucking.
Oh, I know,
my
right?
God.
It's like the entire discography
Did your first
of the Beatles.
time?
Yeah.
Maybe he was really nervous, Took
you
him a
go
while.
on for like 5 songs.
Please flip tape over.
Let's take a break. Let's pick it back up in a little while.
I mean, I actually wrote that in the margin. I was just like, how long is this?
There was one line that Carol says that I was like, this is not how people talk. And she said, "You're confused, Pete, about school, about Hearts, about Anne-Marie, and about me too." It was just like a long list. Like, and then the fact that she threw Hearts in there and I was already like not into the Hearts thing. I was just like, oh boy.
That's fun. Any other miseries here?
No, I just going with Max said, it's weird having so much Dark Tower in the first story and then to just it's not really any magic in the other stories. I guess the Mama San, but that could just be a flashback. That doesn't have to be magical.
Yeah,
so
it's
it
more
is,
mental.
You know,
yeah.
I don't know that this book would have been improved by that, but it would have been kind of interesting to see a touch of magic maybe in some of these stories. But I don't know that would be an improvement or not.
Yeah,
so.
we just get the little bit at the very end with Ted, and like the mitt appearing, but
Yeah.
the whole like it's kind of like the Blind Willie story where the mechanics, like the logistics of it,
Yeah.
puzzle me so much I can't quite.
I wouldn't
grasp
mind
it.
a bit more of a literal connection, I guess, between these stories, which I don't usually say, but
Yeah.
not. I think we covered most of the misery in the other section.
Oh, and I have a nitpick too, which is that at some point when he talks about how, when Pete talks about how he has this high school jacket, but if he had lettered, it only would have been in speech and debate.
Mm-hmm.
I lettered in speech and debate. You actually can't, and he says, and no one gives a letter for those. People do. There are schools where you can get like a
Not
varsity
mine,
letter
because
jacket.
I would have been good at that shit.
I had
but
sports
debate.
and social club letters, so you can do both.
I was a tennis kid.
did
That was
no
pretty
sports. I did not get any letters in sports, but I had one for speech and debate.
NHS.
Let's talk about stuff we liked. Word processor of the gods.
And we're gonna make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
Here we are. Let's talk about one phrase. I'll just say the phrase Sven Gerritsen, Dean of Men, was like a title in Hearts in Atlantis of a guy at the school, which was just, to me, it's a colossal set of words together, which I thoroughly enjoyed. What else do you guys have? Good bits of writing here that we haven't touched on already.
I liked in Hearts in Atlantis, there's that line, there was magic in her story, not in the middle, but somewhere out around the edges. I felt it. I just kind of liked that because I feel like you can never really, I don't know, like it's one, to me, it was like one of those moments where you're recognizing like that this is something you're going to remember. Mm-hmm. Like this is something poignant and it's very rare, I think, when you kind of key in on that when it's actually happening. And whether it's significant or real, you then like will always remember that moment. And I thought that was kind of what was being said there, and I like that line.
Yeah,
man, I left my copy in the other room, but just I will say, Blind Willie had a few turn of phrases that I thought were pretty good. A couple of similes and metaphors that I was like, all right, that's good, King.
Yeah, like I said, there's some good writing in that, but especially because he reworked it a little, you can tell he had some fun with the language, but it just doesn't hold. But
I think we've all mentioned.
Not hard to. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we've all mentioned, I'll say it again, like my very favorite writing in the whole book is probably the surreal, things dropping from the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, I do think the best writing, I guess, Blind Willie has some stuff in it, but it's just it's so overwrought and like confusing, that I think that the best writing is in why we're in Vietnam. He gets in that Sully character in a way that I wouldn't have expected from how he wrote him.
Agreed.
In Low Men. So
yeah, I have that piano section. I'm just going to read it really quick because it's great.
Okay, well, and I have something after that.
It was a grand piano, white with gold chasing, the sort of piano on which you'd expect a long, cool woman in a black dress to tinkle out night and day. In the traffic's boom, in the silence of my lonely room, toot, toot, beat, beat. A white grand piano falling out of the Connecticut sky, turning over and over, making a shadow like a jellyfish on the jammed-up cars, making windy music in its cables as air blew through its rolling chest, its keys rippling like the keys of a player piano, the hazy sun winking on the pedals. It fell in lazy revolutions, and the fattening sound of its drop was like the sound of something vibrating endlessly in a tin tunnel. It fell towards Sully, its uneasy shadow now starting to focus and shrink, his upturned face its seeming target. Incoming, Sully screamed and began to run. Incoming. The piano plummeted toward the turnpike, the white bench falling right behind it. And behind the bench came a comet's tail of sheet music. 45 RPM records with fat holes in the middle, small appliances, a flapping yellow coat that looked like a duster, a Goodyear wide oval tire, a barbecue grill, a weather vane, a file cabinet, and a teacup with world's greatest grandma print on the side. Also, Little King's Dominion there, a flapping yellow coat that looked like a duster. Georgie, anyone?
Oh boy.
Or the low men.
Or low men
low
in
men
yellow
from this
coats.
book.
There's
Yeah,
also
I guess
that.
that's the
That's
first
more
thing
what I
I
was
thought
thinking
of.
of, yeah.
I mean, especially it's a duster. I mean,
Yeah,
because
you're right.
Georgie-
I guess it's not a raincoat. Well,
Yeah.
still King's
Well,
Dominion.
maybe Georgie's entity grew up in the realm of and became a Loman.
Thank you, Mac. I appreciate that. Anna, what do you got?
just this little piece at the very end of Why We're in Vietnam. It was how wars really ended, Diffenbaker supposed. Not at truce tables, but in cancer wards and office cafeterias and traffic jams. Wars died one tiny piece at a time, each piece something that fell like a memory, each lost like an echo that fades into winding hills. In the end, even war ran up the white flag, or so he hoped. He hoped that in the end, even war surrendered.
Yeah, I wrote that down too.
Yeah,
that's great.
good.
That's a good one.
The other one I have from Vietnam is short and just sweet. Rather, he thought of Carol on the day her mother had taken them all to Savin Rock. His friend Bobby had won some money from a 3-card money dealer that day, and Carol had worn her blue bathing suit on the beach, and sometimes she'd give Bobby that look, the one that said he was killing her and death was sweet. It had been in their hands then. He was quite sure of it. But kids lose everything. Kids have slippery fingers and holes in their pockets, and they lose everything. I think that's the line that broke my heart the most out of everything in this. As somebody who gets weepy for the old days sometimes. Any others you guys have? I've got one more. Cool. I'm going to read it. This is also from Why We're in Vietnam, but the coffin was open and old Pags didn't look too shabby. His wife had had the undertaker dress him in an ordinary business suit, not a uniform. She probably hadn't even considered the uniform option, despite the decorations Pagano had won. Pags had worn a uniform for only 2 or 3 years, those years like an aberration, like time spent in some county joint because you did something entirely out of character on one bad luck occasion, probably while you were drunk. Killed a guy in a barroom fight, say, or took it into your head to burn down the church where your ex-wife taught Sunday school. Sully couldn't think of a single man he'd served with, including himself, who'd want to be buried in an army uniform. Thought that was a powerful reflection on, at least how the vets of this world look back on the war. Cool. Let's pop on over. I'll just say, do we have any cemetery? Yeah, this isn't really a scary book, so we can probably skip that one.
I thought it was scary how fast Blind Willie was making money out on the streets. But
There were a couple of little things like the description on Why We're in Vietnam about like the screaming TV. They were all screaming TV dinners and
the flesh slipping off their bones. King's really into that particular idea when people get burned.
Or just the finding out like one of your good friends was involved in the accidental bombing. I think it's kind of jarring. But like, yeah, you're right. There's no real like spooky cemetery stuff. That's, well, at least maybe in Loman, but we went over that already.
All right. Let's have a slice of pound cake.
After all you've been taught,
Everyone in bed, Mama. Everything in the sin.
come to your closet and pray, ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
Who's got some pound cake? I've got a couple. Anna?
I'm, like I said, the having a transcendental sex on your very first try.
There was one that made me laugh. A couple that made me laugh. I put them in pound cake. I don't know if they're quite pound cake, but after he breaks up with Anne Marie, his high school girlfriend in Hearts in Atlantis, he says, I stood at the window over the kitchen sink watching the taillights of Mr. Susie's truck disappear down the road. I felt ashamed of myself. Christ, the way her eyes had widened, the way her smile had faded and begun to tremble. But I also felt shittily happy, disgustingly relieved, light enough to dance up the walls and across the ceiling and make Fred stare. I wrote that in pound cake, I think, just because it's such an ugly feeling that I felt before, like when I've broken up with people who I just wasn't happy with, and the absolute fucking joy of like being free is something I've like. I love shittily happy is a phrase that as inelegant as it is, I relate to it very much. Mac, how about you?
Yeah, I had a few, all from Hearts in Atlantis. But as the all I wanted was information and maybe to ball her socks off. Or when he's talking about Anne Marie and just randomly starts saying like, an Anne Marie specialty, those slow stroking hand jobs were another. You're like, did you need to say that in that moment? Or when I think it's Carol is like, slow, eat every one of your vegetables and maybe you'll get dessert. I was like, ugh.
Pound cake for dessert, probably.
I know. Yeah. Pound cake. Let's see. Or he like happens to mention or feels the need to say, we did it with no protection there. So there's probably a trace of semen on the quilted lining. And you're like,
I was going to write that. Like
okay,
he talks about,
like,
he talks about his coat from high school or whatever that he put a peace sign on. And then he's like, oh man, I got gassed in that. I did this. There's also semen on it.
Like, thanks.
It's like, didn't need to share that.
Yeah, as if every article of clothing that a high school boy owns doesn't have semen on it. But the only thing I had just was the ball her socks off, because I had a roommate who used to use the term ball kind of as a joke, and because it's such like an old-timey phrase.
Yeah.
Like, we'll give her a good balling.
Give her a good balling.
Disgusting.
Talking about fingering Carol also.
Oh, yeah. We don't need to talk about that. Okay, cool.
There's another world out there. I know there is.
King's Dominion. Let's take a walk around King's Dominion. I've got a few here. There's a mention of a virulent strain of influenza on page 329.
Is
the
that?
stand.
That's right, Randall.
Virulent strain sounds pretty bad. Maybe Captain Trips. What else do you guys have? I've got a few others, but Mac.
Oh God, the amount of times they mention 19 in Hearts in Atlantis is kind of like hit me over the head with it.
He has 19
boys flunked out, right?
No, and there's 19 layers of junk on his desk, is mentioned.
Yeah. They got the dairy news.
Yep, there's many mentions of dairy.
Mm-hmm. I think Stokely there was mention of someone being in a coma for 19 days.
Oh, I missed that one.
Yeah, and I'll leave the big one. Well, we kind of already teased it earlier.
Well, I have one more before we talk about the big one. And this is less King's Dominion, but it was just a weird coincidence. I can't remember which story it is, but he uses the phrase "faw down, go boom," FAW down, go boom. And literally the day I read it, King tweeted out the exact same phrase in response to something, which was just a weird coincidence. I think I made a note of it in our newsletter, or I will in the next one.
I just wonder if are we folding in room 237?
Yes.
Because
okay.
Yeah, I'm almost there too.
So when they cover up the graffiti and that Stokely did, it's with a piece of yellow canvas.
Oh shit, the low men.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Can I do
Dan?
Blind Willie? He mentions the John Lennon song "Instant Karma," which the lyric is "We all shine on," and that's actually where The Shining gets its name from. Is that term is from Instant Karma.
That's a deep grab.
And room 237, there's the doors break on through, and in Drawing of the Three, he uses doors to bring his members.
Wow.
Boo.
Yeah.
Mac.
So strangely, like when you said that, when King tweeted out that thing, I was reading the Hearts in Atlantis story, and he starts talking about like things going on in the now, and he mentions the X-Files, and I was like watching I Want to Believe like that day. I was like, oh, this is just a weird random mention of X-Files when it's talking about this story back, during college. But by room 237, I got two. Page 299, they talk about Stokely's sparrow track, and I kept thinking, oh, are these the sparrows from the Dark Half that have made this peace sign? And and then Pete Riley on page 284, in talking about the season of hearts, he says, the mad season had begun. Do you think that this is the conceit of Matchbox 20's album Mad Season that came out in May 2000? Because Hearts and Atlantis came out in September 1999, so I think we can safely say that Matchbox 20's Mad Season is about Hearts and Atlantis. So I challenge you to go out there and listen to that album again, and let us know if you see any connection.
I love that we've talked about Goo Goo Dolls and Matchbox 20 in this Hearts and Atlantis episode.
I'm a big fan of both bands.
The big one
is... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, the big one, the Svengali-like leader, Raymond Fiegler, whose last name sounds a little too much like my own. But yeah, this is pretty clear. The initials RF, right?
So we have RF, Randall Flagg type figure, and it's more or less confirmed in Heavenly Shades of Night when she says that she has this ability to blend into crowds because she can quote unquote go dim, which is something that Flagg the magician is able to do in Eyes of the Dragon. So pretty explicit connection there, and yeah, I thought it was interesting the way that he uses RF to show how even the Resistance was bad faith actors taking root within the Resistance to sort of corrupt the idealism that existed there. I wanted to mention that a little bit earlier, but I think that was kind of a wry move on King's part to show that he wasn't necessarily acting as if these Resistance groups were ill-intentioned, but that there are always bad actors in whatever kind of movement that will start. And I think he's using RF as sort of a stand-in there.
I did want to mention in Blind Willie, someone's also wearing a blue Cambry shirt.
Oh yeah, I wrote that down.
And this isn't really anything, but I don't know where to put it. But I love the show The Prisoner. So as soon as they started quoting that and talking about that, I was just like, this is great. And also at the very end, the afterword, King's like, well, The Prisoner wouldn't make it to the U.S. until 2 years later, but I really wanted to work it in there.
Oh yeah, he says that. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's move on to our final thoughts.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Okay. In final thoughts, we share our final thoughts of Bright Red Pennywise Clown Nose rankings, as well as our MVP of these stories. So I don't want to do noses for every one of them, because like Heavenly Shades of Night are Falling is like 3 pages. Yeah. So let's just kind of treat it as these 4 stories. What kind of nose rating would we give them? Mac, do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, as a collection, it's so sporadic and strange. I think that what Anna said earlier about maybe you will go back and reread it. I think I will probably reread this eventually, because there is so much weird, tangled themes. And obviously we discussed it here ad nauseum, but like, I do feel like there's maybe more to pull, maybe in 10 more years, I go back and look at it or whatever. But for me, it's kind of like Lowman was the high point, and then you go to these other stories. So for me, I think it's going to be 3 Bright Red Pennywise Clown Noses, because I really like that story, and it's just, but I can't really give it that.
It's a hard act to follow.
The hard act to follow. And my MVP is that story. Is Lowman.
No, you can't do that.
Okay. Then
Sorry,
it's solely John. It's solely John, because I do feel like the Why We're in Vietnam is the superior story at the end, and I think that it's a complicated character that you don't necessarily agree with, but like I think it's the most emotionally invested I think I was reading the rest of those stories.
Yeah, Anna, how about you? Nose rating and MVP.
I'm gonna give it a 2.5.
All right.
So it gets to stay in school, and
won't get drafted.
It won't get drafted. And that's about how I feel about the last 4 stories. Like, I wouldn't want him to get drafted, but I'm not a huge fan. I think Why We're in Vietnam. I mean, there's great writing throughout. Like there's bits and pieces of it that would be much more than 2.5 Bright Red Pennywise Clown Noses. But I do think it's never a good sign when you have more fun discussing a text than you do reading it. So like the only way I'd read it again probably is like if I got another chance to talk about it. Like I don't know if I'd read it just to read it. I mean, life is short.
Yeah.
And
your
as far
MVP.
as in my MVP, I gotta say Carol.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, she's the MVP for everyone else in the book, right? And I again, tiny bit of disappointment to have just a tiny bit of agency taken from her. But I think she's actually pretty. Especially since we only see her refracted through other people's eyes, I think she's a surprisingly like nuanced character.
Yeah.
and a believably strong one. So yeah, Carol.
Yeah. Dan.
Yeah, this is definitely not a top tier King book for me. I believe I gave Low Men a 4, and I don't think any of these stories came close to being a 4. I think Hearts in Atlantis I actually liked a lot more after I was done thinking about it than I recalled the first time. But Why We're in Vietnam I would give that positive marks too, but the rest, it just didn't measure up to that. It's hard when you start with your strongest story in a collection of 5 stories. So for that reason, I'm going to have to give this 2.75 bright red Pennywise clown noses. And I guess I got to say, my MVP, it's got to be Ted. I wish he was my friend and we could hang out and he could put his hand on my shoulder and then I could have psychic abilities.
I'll allow it even though he doesn't technically show up.
He writes a letter and his name is mentioned.
Oh, that's right. He does write a letter.
Yeah, don't try to put rules with me, son.
The funny thing is, like, I mostly concur with all of you. I'm going to give it a little bit higher, though, 3.5, just because even though I didn't particularly enjoy reading a lot of these, especially Blind Willie, which I find kind of miserable, and I think Why We're in Vietnam is very good, but I wouldn't say I enjoyed myself. And if anything, I thought that I found reading it to be almost punishing. Not because it wasn't good, but because there are things about it. There was like this overwhelming melancholy baked into it that I didn't necessarily enjoy sitting in. And I think I felt there's a sweeter melancholy to Hearts in Atlantis that was also uncomfortable because I don't like to feel feelings. And this book made me feel a lot of feelings about sort of my, I don't know, like I'm at an age, I think, where I'm like realizing how much time has gone by since college, and I'm thinking about how much I've changed and how much my friend group has changed and the people I know and the people I'm still in contact with and so on and so forth. And I'm kind of having these a lot of big feelings, and this book sort of exacerbated them in ways that were, I think, edifying ultimately, but also unpleasant. And I immediately started reading a very silly, dumb horror book after this was done because I just wanted to be in a happy place again. So, but I think that emotional component though is something that is good when books accomplish that. And so I kind of it kind of pulled these feelings out of me that I didn't want to come out, but I think ultimately are good for, I think, my edification and my literary experience. And I think it made for a better episode in general. I think this was a great chat. So MVP is The Falling Piano because that shit was cool as hell. So I'm going to stick with that. Okay.
What's his name?
His name is Barney. Barney the Falling Piano.
I missed your actual number of clown noses.
Oh, 3.5.
Oh yeah.
3.5.
Yeah. So right. I'm always a generous noser on this, and I'm gonna stick with that for this one. But this was fun. Thanks so much, everybody, and thank you for listening to this. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thebarons. We're gonna be dropping an archives episode talking about King's Garbage Truck, his column from his college days, which is very much interwoven with this text in general. We're gonna have, I think, an episode that's pretty well timed in terms of how it dovetails with the coverage we've been doing. So check that out. We got a lot of other good stuff on the way as well. Hit up our merch store, losersclubstore.com. Lots of good stuff. And with that, we'll sign off with a long days
and
pleasant
nights.
Nice.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
This is the end of our show. For now. We hope you enjoyed this production. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, and more.